We hear
Hey!
you. Woo.
Hey, there we go. There we go.
Nice. Justin,
Apologize. I don't know what happened there.
dude, I don't know either. We were just talking how like finicky technology can be, but
I literally did nothing different. I closed it and opened it back up.
nice. That's great. Justin Cramer from Former Action Guys podcast. That is such a cool name, and that started from your service in the military, correct?
That's correct. It's funny. I actually kicked that name around for at least a month. I was like, man, everyone knows the acronym is, everybody knows what the acronym is. Is that gonna be an issue? And I knew it was a good name, but I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the trigger and go for it.
Such a great name.
People want to push back, they'll push back, whatever.
What branch of the military did you serve in?
So I was in the Marine Corps for 12 years. I joined initially what's called open contract, which means made a mistake and let the military decide what job I was going to do instead of picking my own. And after 3 years, I was a mechanic for 3 years, and I did a deployment to Iraq. And while I was there, the opportunity to re-enlist and switch jobs came up. So I switched jobs and became a fire support man, or what a lot of people call a forward observer. And from that, I became a JTAC, a Joint Terminal Attack Controller. And so it was a pretty good career, 5 deployments, and yeah.
What were you going to say, Slim?
Oh, I was actually just going to admit that I didn't realize what the acronym was until you said it, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
I get the occasional comment on like YouTube or on Instagram like, hey, do you realize what this acronym is? And I'm like, yeah, it was on purpose. It's funny. the whole point of it being called the Former Action Guys podcast is that's what we used to call someone that had like a cool job, and now they've gotten promoted to the point where now they're like a staff guy or they're working in an office.
A pencil pusher.
Now you're the former action guy.
Oh, that's great. Oh my God. I was gonna say too. You saying you were first brought on as a mechanic. My father was a mechanic in the Vietnam era.
Oh, awesome.
So that's cool.
Yeah, it's not a bad. I mean, it's not a bad job, I guess, but it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to come in and be in combat arms, which is like infantry, artillery, tank, something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't see myself turning wrenches, all day long. So
how do they?
I figured.
I just want to know how they come to that conclusion. Like, obviously, you say, okay, you pick for me. Do they like roll a giant die and wherever it lands?
Yeah. So the way it works is,
or whatever they need.
When you join, you take the ASVAB, which is like it's a test. It's kind of like SATs, I guess, for the military, and it kind of gives them a understanding of your different skills, either mechanical skills or like clerical skills, different, just stuff like that. And from that, they bounce out off what the Marine Corps actually needs at the time. And, from there, you just get thrown into a pile like, hey, you're going over here and you're going to become a mechanic. Initially, they told me, they're like, hey, open contract guy, you're going to go be an intelligence dude. You're going to go make maps, I think is what the job was, which is, again, not something I wanted to do. But I was like, well, could be cool. I'll get out with a security clearance and I could go get a cool job after that, whatever. But then as the military does, they flipped the script a little bit and I became a mechanic. So, but, like I said, I became a fire support man or a forward observer, which is that means I get attached with like infantry units or something like that. And if something happens, I'm the guy on the radio calling in artillery strikes or air strikes when I became a JTAC. So that's kind of what that job is.
Gotcha.
I just had this image in my head of these two military guys standing around going like, this guy is a map guy, and the other guy going like, well, no, you said the other guy was going to be the map guy. No, you know what? Make him a mechanic. He'll be our map guy.
There was a whole group of us, because they tell you after boot camp, they're like, hey, all the open contract guys, come over here and you're going to figure out what your job is. And there was like me and a bunch of other dudes, and they're like, you're going to be intelligence, you guys are going to be tankers, and everyone was like, cool, that's cool. And then we all got to our follow-on training. And they told us all, they're like, no, never mind, you guys are all going to become mechanics. And we're like, oh.
You're the mechanic group.
So apparently they were a little short-handed for mechs at the time. So,
Wow.
I'll tell you though, even though I didn't enjoy it as much as some people probably did, I learned a lot, and I
Yeah.
can work on my own vehicle. I probably saved, I don't even know how many thousands of dollars just being able to maintain my own stuff and upgrade my own stuff without
That's
a
awesome.
mechanic.
That's cool. I was going to ask too, Justin, what was your reason for joining the military, just in the first place?
Well, so I was a senior in high school when September 11th happened, and like many people, I watched the towers go down and stuff like that, and it was like an impactful moment in my life. However, my family, I have a history of military service in my family. My dad was in the Army. My grandfather was in the Army. My other grandfather was in the Air Force. He was actually in the Army Air Corps before it became the Air Force, and then the Army, or excuse me, the Air Force. So it was something I knew I was going to do. But when September 11th happened, it kind of solidified, the whole process. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. And I was going to say too, people talk about the fighting and all that. What is one of the most fun times you had being in the military?
Oh man, there's a lot of fun times. I mean, for me, honestly, being a JTAC, the guy that gets to call in airstrikes and stuff like that, going out with my buddies to San Clemente Island off the coast of California, and just calling in airstrikes, just blowing stuff up, and then after it's all done, just sitting there watching the sunset or whatever, and just basically camping with your homies. That right there was probably the best moments for me. I'm a guy that like to train. I like to be out in the field and kind of out there doing my job. Because if you're back in the rear, you're dealing with stupid stuff, administrative stuff, and general militariness that you just don't want to be around.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. We had a buddy that used to come on our show, and he had been a veteran, and he always said somebody that walks around bragging about the stuff they've done just in the military. They've usually haven't seen as much action as people who don't talk about it. I didn't know if that was a valid point.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say a lot of guys, it's like anything else. A lot of guys, when people are more humble, they've probably done a lot, or they've probably done more. They don't want to talk about it. I don't know. For me, and it's funny because I started a podcast, so then it makes it sound like, I'm that guy. But
Well,
the whole point of me, starting the podcast and stuff was like, I got out of the Marine Corps and I was like, man, I know so many cool guys that have done so many awesome things that will never be written in a history book or never talked about on TV or anything like that. And those stories deserve to be told.
Yeah.
And so I just took advantage of my relationship with all these people.
That's what I was going to ask.
Started recording them.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know. I didn't know if you found most of your guests from people you'd served with, or or do people or you had those kind of people on, and do other people come across you because of that?
So initially it started out with a core group of guys that I knew. The first 2 episodes are with me and my corpsman. So when I decided to start the podcast, it was, I got out of the Marine Corps. I was in college, and it was the summer between my, sophomore and junior year in college. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take a road trip cross country. I'm going to crash on different dudes I know's couches and just record some interviews. And that'll be, when I get back, I'll have, 6 or 7 interviews already ready to go. That way I don't feel pressured to, have to constantly make them. But yeah, it was just, that's what it started out. I just cruise cross country and hit up one guy, stayed on his couch, did an interview, got up the next day, drove to the next state, and hit up somebody else, and that's kind of it. Now I'm at 151 episodes. People are reaching out to me about it, and it's been a good time.
That's cool. And you also talk to first responders as well as veterans, correct?
Yeah, I try to. There's so many people out there that have these that just. I mean, imagine what a police officer sees every day or a firefighter sees on a day-to-day basis. And it's like, we can't imagine it because we don't do that. And it's unfair really that, one, the general public doesn't know what their taxes are going to, hey, you should know, this is the reality. This is what guys are actually doing. But it's like, some of these dudes are legitimate heroes that no one will ever know about unless someone brings their story up and records it. And I told my guest, I'm like, or potential guests too. I'm like, hey, for me, it's not just like, hey, this is cool, we're getting an interview and we'll post it up. Think about your kids or your kids' kids, and this is something that's going to be on the internet forever. And now they can be like, hey, what did Grandpa do during the war? Hey, what did Grandpa do as a firefighter in Cleveland? Like I don't know. I think to me, that's probably the most important part.
What is one of the common misconceptions that civilians have of the military?
Man, they watch too much TV. We don't all march around and stand, like all rigid constantly and stuff like that. That's one big one. It's not as strict as you. I mean, it's strict, but it's not like crazy, like you're in a parade all the time marching around. Two, not everybody goes to combat. Even through 20 years of war in Afghanistan and Iraq, I would say, in all that time, less than probably 5% of all the military saw actual combat. You can go to Iraq or you can go to Afghanistan and not see any combat. My first deployment as a mechanic, I was in Iraq, on a big air base. There was a chow hall. There was a PX where we could go to, like a little store we could go to and buy stuff. Every once in a while, the air base would catch a mortar or something like that, but there wasn't like firefights or anything. Like not everybody gets into firefights. So that's a huge thing I try to put across, because I think it comes with a stigma. A lot of veterans have a stigma attached to them, like, oh, this dude's probably got PTSD, he's been in combat. And it's like, no, dude, most of the guys, even some combat arms guys, never saw anything.
Wow. That's surprising to hear. That's very cool to hear.
It might even be less than 5%.
Wow.
Which is, I know it's crazy for people on the outside to hear that.
Yeah. Cool. And I wanted to ask you too, Justin, what do you feel being the current state of the world? Are we headed toward World War III with Russia and Ukraine and all that?
It's hard to say what's going on, what Putin's going to do and over there. I will say that I've talked to a few people about it now, and we're all highly disappointed in the way Russia, not disappointed like they should be doing better, but disappointed like we thought we put Russian forces up and Chinese forces, these near peer states up on like a pedestal, like,
yes.
Hey, we got to train to be ready for these amazing fighters.
Yeah.
And I think what we've seen in Ukraine is that they really don't know what they're doing. They're making a lot of mistakes, and it's just kind of really simple mistakes that if I was still in the Marines, any of my junior Marines did some of the stuff that they're doing, I'd be like, what the fuck, what are you doing?
Right. Get your shit together, bro. Like, yeah.
This is, it's just crazy. They got tires blowing out. They can't even stay, they can't go off road. So they'll get stuck. So they're all bunching up. And that, for me, the guy that used to, be the dude to call in bombs and stuff, that's a perfect target. You're talking about a 2-mile convoy all bunched up on a road.
Yeah.
Take them all out.
Yeah, no, I feel like the Ukrainians have been handling it amazingly.
I think we're seeing a shift in how war is going to be fought. Recently the Commandant of the Marine Corps has made some changes, and a lot of people kind of push back on it. They've gotten rid of tanks in the Marine Corps. They're trying to shift to kind of like smaller teams going out and doing things rather than like these big elements. And there was a lot of pushback, and it's like now seeing Russian armor get destroyed by a couple guys, with a rocket or even a drone flying around, putting one round into it. Now you have this 50-ton piece of metal that's worthless.
Yeah.
And so I think we're kind of seeing that, and it's like, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't put our money into armor that can be destroyed so easily. Or maybe, look at the ship that they had. They got taken down by 2 anti-ship missiles. So if I was a senior military leader and I'm looking at China as a threat and, this whole pivot to the Pacific, I would probably want to figure out a way to not have my guys on ships or have them better protected than that one was, because it's just too juicy of a target,
Yup. That's a great point. That's amazing. Can you tell us, Justin, what has been one of your favorite interviews on your show?
Man, there's been so many. Honestly, the first interview was probably one of my favorites just because it was with my corpsman, he was, a Navy medic. And he's just such a badass. We went to Sangin together, which was a really crappy place to be. And that was his 3rd time there. He got blown up there, on his first deployment, and medevaced out after like a month and a half or something like that. And then went back there 2 more times.
Wow.
And I remember when we were over there, we drive by the building that he got blown up in. He got blown up, and then two of his buddies, multiple people. And he's like, dude, that's the house. That's the building that got blown up. And we just drive by it, and it's like, so situations like that. Dale Comstock was on recently. He was a Delta operator with the Army and has done a bunch of crazy stuff. So that's really interesting to hear from somebody that's been on like the tip of the spear, like always ready to go kind of guy.
Yeah. And as far as you saying you were in the Marines, do different branches, do they compete? Do they despise each other? How does that work?
Well, obviously the Marines are the best, so there's not too much competition.
I figured.
Nah, I think overall, everybody gets along pretty well.
Yeah.
The only time it's just a different culture, it's just between the Army and the Marines and stuff like that. It's I talk to guys on the podcast about it. It's like you have to make a decision to go into the Marine Corps. Like you're going into the hardest boot camp, like initial training and stuff like that. Even though you could go and get the same job in the Army, you're going through something harder. So I think it brings a different mentality of people into the Marine Corps. Now I got nothing bad to say, mostly about the Army guys and stuff like that. I was on ship for 2 deployments. That was probably my worst deployments I had, was just being on Navy ships. But their culture is so much different than ours, where it's like a caste system. Like if you're a junior sailor, you're treated like crap. You're basically treated like crap. You're fed almost nothing. You're living in tiny berthing areas with tons of people. When I was on there, we had 110 or 120 Marines all in the same room. That's probably maybe the size of a basketball court, maybe. And, 3 toilets and two sinks or whatever.
Wow.
It's just miserable living,
Yeah, it sounds it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, Justin. What do you do now for a day job? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I actually work at an ad agency here in California. I just started recently. Before that, I was just doing the podcast, and I have a website that I do some drop shipping, like graphic design work and stuff like that. But I just started my first real job since I joined in 2006. So since the 2006, this is the first civilian job I've really had. So it's been kind of interesting doing that and just getting used to working around normal people, not military people.
What kind of ads do you guys do?
We do mostly, we help like serve a lot of it's service companies, helping them rank higher on Google, run cool. ads, pay-per-click kind of ads through Google ads and stuff like that. I've been brought in to do like search engine optimization, SEO, if you've heard of it, and because I've run a podcast and I have a YouTube channel and all that stuff. They're using that. They're also leveraging that experience too, because they haven't done that. They've studied it or whatever. But I'm actually been in the weeds with it, so I can sit down and talk to one of the clients and be like, hey, here's how you should do. Here's what you should cut out of your clips. Here's what just. Yeah, it's good stuff.
I love that. That just reminds me, years ago, I remember Slim telling me one of the people he's associated with was, I don't know if they saw our Twitter and they were just like, how do you guys do it?
Yeah. I still get that all the time. Like how, like what?
I just did it. I don't even know. I could consult though, I guess.
Yeah. It's just like, it's like consistency. I'm sure you found over the years, it's consistency and quality content. That's what people want to see.
Yeah.
And that's like my biggest thing I tell people. I'm like, make stuff that you would want to watch. If you wouldn't want to watch it, then why would you put it out there? So
right. Yes, exactly. That's a great way to look at it, Justin.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it, dude. And Justin, we have to wrap this up, but thank you so much for talking to us, man.
Yeah, man, no problem. Anytime. Thanks for having me on. Everybody can check out my podcast, Former Action Guys Podcast. It's available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all over the place.
So, yeah, Former Action Guys, and you could just search it anywhere, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. Thank you, Justin.
All right, you guys have a good night.
You too, my friend.
Justin.